Welcome to Deep Ocean Sleep Science. This is a space for restful exploration. Tonight, we will contemplate a simple, profound concept. Life without sunlight. The sun rises every morning. Light fills the sky. Colors appear. Warmth spreads across the land. For most of human history, sunlight has been the rhythm that shaped our days. We wake when it arrives. We rest when it fades. Our eyes evolved to see its light. Our skin evolved to feel its warmth. Our entire biology is tuned to the presence of the sun. But there are places on Earth where sunlight never reaches. Deep beneath the surface of the ocean. Inside caves that wind through solid rock for miles. In cracks within the Earth's crust, far below any living thing that depends on photosynthesis. These are worlds of permanent darkness. And yet, life exists there. Not just survives, but thrives. Complex ecosystems have formed in places where no ray of sunlight has ever touched. This is a story about those places. About the creatures that live there. About the strange and beautiful ways that life has adapted to exist without the one thing we thought was essential. It is a story told slowly, with care, because these hidden worlds deserve our attention. Not our excitement. Just our quiet wonder. Let us begin in the deep ocean. Far below the surface. Beyond the reach of light. The ocean is not one single environment. It is a series of layers, each with its own conditions, its own temperature, its own pressure. Near the surface, sunlight penetrates the water. Photosynthesis occurs. Algae and phytoplankton convert light into energy. These tiny organisms form the base of the food chain. Fish eat them. Larger fish eat those fish. The energy of the sun flows through the entire system. But sunlight does not reach very far into the ocean. Water absorbs light quickly. Red light disappears first, within the first few meters. Orange and yellow follow. By the time you reach 200 meters deep, even blue light, which penetrates the farthest, is almost entirely gone. Below this point, there is a zone called the twilight zone, or the mesopelagic zone. A faint glow may still exist here, but it is dim and blue and fading. Below 1000 meters, there is no sunlight at all. This is the midnight zone, or the bathypelagic zone. It is a place of complete and permanent darkness. The pressure here is immense. The temperature hovers just above freezing. No plants can grow. No photosynthesis can occur. And yet, life is everywhere. The creatures that live in the deep ocean have never seen the sun. Their ancestors, millions of years ago, may have lived closer to the surface. But over time, they moved deeper. They adapted. Their bodies changed. Their senses changed. Their entire way of living changed to suit a world without light. Many deep-sea creatures produce their own light. This is called bioluminescence. It is a chemical reaction that occurs inside their bodies. Special cells contain a substance called luciferin. When luciferin reacts with oxygen, in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase, it produces light. This light is usually blue or green, because those colors travel farthest in water. Bioluminescence serves many purposes. Some creatures use it to attract prey. The anglerfish is perhaps the most famous example. It has a long, thin appendage that extends from its head, tipped with a glowing lure. Small fish and shrimp, drawn to the light, swim closer. The anglerfish waits, motionless, until the prey is within reach. Then it strikes. There are many species of anglerfish, each with its own variation on this theme. Some have elaborate lures that resemble small fish or worms. Others have multiple light organs arranged in patterns along their bodies. The light they produce is not harsh. It is soft, almost gentle, like a distant star in the darkness. But it is effective. In a world where food is scarce, any advantage matters. The anglerfish itself is an unusual creature. The females are much larger than the males, sometimes 10 times larger. The males, in many species, are parasitic. When a male finds a female, he bites onto her body and fuses with her. His circulatory system merges with hers. He becomes a permanent appendage, providing sperm when needed. He loses his independence, his ability to feed himself, even his eyes. He becomes, essentially, a living reproductive organ attached to the female. This may seem strange, even disturbing, by surface standards. But in the deep ocean, it makes sense. Finding a mate in the vast darkness is difficult. The chances of encountering another individual of your species are vanishingly small. By fusing permanently, the male ensures that when the female is ready to reproduce, a mate is available. It is an extreme adaptation, but it works. Other creatures use bioluminescence to communicate. Certain species of squid flash patterns of light across their skin. These patterns may signal to potential mates. They may warn rivals. They may coordinate hunting behavior within a group. In the darkness, light becomes language. The firefly squid, which lives in the waters off Japan, produces a spectacular light display. During certain times of year, they gather in large numbers near the shore. Each squid glows with hundreds of tiny light organs, called photophores, distributed across its body. When thousands of them gather together, the water seems to glow with an eerie blue light. It is one of the few times that deep-sea bioluminescence becomes visible from the surface. Some animals use bioluminescence as camouflage. This may seem contradictory, but it works through a clever mechanism called counterillumination. When you look up from the deep ocean, you can see a faint glow from the surface, even in the midnight zone. If a predator is below you, looking up, your body would appear as a dark silhouette against that faint glow. But if you produce light on your underside, matching the intensity and color of the light from above, you become invisible. Your silhouette disappears. Many fish and squid use this technique to avoid being eaten. The lanternfish is a master of counterillumination. It has rows of photophores along its belly, precisely arranged to eliminate its shadow. The intensity of the light is carefully controlled, matching the ambient light from above. As the fish rises or descends, it adjusts the brightness of its photophores to maintain perfect camouflage. This requires a sophisticated sensory system, able to detect extremely faint light levels and respond accordingly. Lanternfish are small, typically just a few centimeters long. But they are abundant. They may be the most numerous vertebrates on Earth. Every night, billions of them rise from the deep ocean toward the surface to feed on plankton. Every morning, they descend back into the darkness. This is called vertical migration, and it is one of the largest movements of biomass on the planet. It happens every day, in oceans all over the world, mostly unseen by humans. The deep ocean is not a barren desert. It is densely populated. Scientists estimate that the mesopelagic zone alone contains more fish biomass than all the fish caught by humans each year. These fish are small, often just a few centimeters long. They have large eyes, adapted to detect even the faintest light. Their bodies are soft and gelatinous, an adaptation to the intense pressure. They move slowly, conserving energy in an environment where food is scarce. Pressure in the deep ocean is crushing by surface standards. At a depth of 1,000 meters, the pressure is about 100 times greater than at the surface. At the deepest part of the ocean, the Mariana Trench, more than 11 kilometers down, the pressure is over 1,000 times surface pressure. A human would be crushed instantly. Most surface organisms would be destroyed. But deep-sea creatures are adapted to this pressure. Their bodies contain no air spaces that could be compressed. Their cell membranes are specially designed, with different lipid compositions that remain flexible under pressure. Their proteins are structured to function in high-pressure environments. What would kill a surface organism is normal for them. They cannot survive in low pressure. If you bring a deep-sea fish to the surface, the decrease in pressure causes gases dissolved in its tissues to expand. Its swim bladder, if it has one, inflates and ruptures. Its eyes bulge. Its body swells. It dies. This makes studying deep-sea creatures difficult. Bringing them to the surface alive is nearly impossible for many species. Scientists have developed special pressurized containers that can maintain deep-sea pressure during the ascent. But these are expensive and complex. Most deep-sea organisms must be studied in their natural habitat, using submersibles and remotely operated vehicles. Food in the deep ocean comes primarily from above. Dead organisms sink from the surface. Bits of algae. Dead fish. Fecal matter from larger animals. All of this organic material drifts downward, slowly, over days or weeks. This is called marine snow. It looks like a gentle, constant snowfall, except the flakes are particles of once living tissue. Marine snow is the primary food source for many deep-sea creatures. They filter it from the water. They catch it with specialized appendages. They graze on it as it settles on the ocean floor. The journey of marine snow is slow. A particle might take weeks to fall from the surface to the abyssal plain. Along the way, it is consumed and reprocessed by countless organisms. Bacteria break it down. Zooplankton eat it and produce their own waste. Fish eat the zooplankton. Each step extracts energy, and each step reduces the amount of material that reaches the bottom. By the time marine snow reaches the ocean floor, only a small fraction of the original organic matter remains. But some organisms wait for something more substantial. When a large animal dies at the surface, a whale for example, its body sinks. This is called a whale fall, and it represents a massive input of food to the deep ocean. A single whale carcass can provide sustenance for an entire community of organisms for years or even decades. When a whale dies and sinks, it falls through the water column like a slow-motion meteor. It may take hours or days to reach the bottom, depending on the depth. Once it settles on the ocean floor, the feast begins. The first arrivals are mobile scavengers. Hagfish, with their primitive, eel-like bodies. Sleeper sharks, moving slowly through the darkness. Amphipods, shrimp-like crustaceans that swarm over the carcass in huge numbers. These creatures strip the soft tissue from the whale, eating until they are bloated. Some species gorge themselves so thoroughly that they can barely move afterward. This stage can last for months or years, depending on the size of the whale and the number of scavengers. When the soft tissue is gone, only the skeleton remains. But the whale fall is far from finished. The bones of a whale contain large amounts of lipids, fatty compounds stored within the bone matrix. These lipids provide food for a different set of organisms. Zombie worms, properly called ostacs, are specialists in consuming whale bones. They have no mouth and no gut. Instead, they have root-like structures that penetrate into the bone, and bacteria in these roots break down the lipids. The worms absorb the nutrients produced by the bacteria. It is another example of symbiosis, of two organisms working together to survive in a harsh environment. Zombie worms come in many species, and they are found on whale falls around the world. They are beautifully colored, red and pink and white, though no one in the deep ocean can see these colors. Their appearance is irrelevant in the darkness. What matters is their ability to extract energy from a resource that few other organisms can use. The bone-eating stage of a whale fall can last for decades. Slowly, the lipids are consumed. The bones become brittle and hollow. Eventually, they collapse into fragments. But even then, the whale fall is not over. The final stage is the reef stage. The bones, even depleted and fragmented, provide a hard surface in an environment where most of the floor is soft sediment. Organisms that need a solid substrate to attach to can colonize the bones. Tube worms, mussels, and other filter feeders settle on the remains. The whale skeleton becomes a small reef, an oasis of diversity on the barren abyssal plain. This stage can last for many more decades, until the bones are finally buried by sediment or dissolved by the acidic water. A single whale fall can support hundreds of species over the course of a century. It is an island of life in the deep ocean, a pocket of abundance in a region where food is usually scarce. Scientists have found that some species exist only on whale falls, moving from one carcass to another over the course of their lives. How they find the next whale fall, scattered randomly across millions of square kilometers of ocean floor, is still not entirely understood. But not all deep-sea life depends on marine snow or whale falls. In some places, there are other sources of energy. Places where life does not depend on the sun at all, even indirectly. These are the hydrothermal vents. Hydrothermal vents were first discovered in 1977, near the Galapagos Islands. Scientists in a small submersible descended to the ocean floor, more than 2,000 meters below the surface. They expected to find a barren, lifeless plain. Instead, they found towering chimneys of mineral deposits, spewing superheated water into the freezing ocean. And surrounding these vents, teeming with life, were entire ecosystems unlike anything seen before. The discovery was a shock to the scientific community. It challenged fundamental assumptions about what life required. It showed that sunlight was not essential. It opened up new possibilities for where life might exist, both on Earth and beyond. The water emerging from hydrothermal vents can reach temperatures of 400 degrees Celsius. At the surface, water boils at 100 degrees. But in the deep ocean, the immense pressure prevents boiling. The water remains liquid even at these extreme temperatures. It is filled with minerals and chemicals from deep within the Earth's crust. Iron, sulfur, methane, hydrogen sulfide. These chemicals are toxic to most life. But for certain bacteria, they are a source of energy. These bacteria do not use photosynthesis. They use chemosynthesis. They take chemicals like hydrogen sulfide and combine them with oxygen from the seawater. This reaction releases energy, which the bacteria use to build organic molecules from carbon dioxide. In other words, they create food from chemicals, just as plants create food from sunlight. These bacteria are the foundation of the vent ecosystem. The bacteria grow in dense mats around the vents, forming white or yellow films on the rocks. They grow quickly, taking advantage of the abundant chemical energy. Other organisms feed on these bacteria, and a complex food web develops. In some ways, a hydrothermal vent ecosystem resembles a surface ecosystem. There are primary producers, the bacteria. There are grazers that eat the bacteria. There are predators that eat the grazers. The structure is similar, but the energy source is completely different. Around the vents, you can find tube worms. They are pale, almost ghostly, with bright red plumes extending from their tubes. These are Riftia pachyptila, giant tube worms that can grow up to 2 meters long. They have no mouth, no digestive system, no anus. They cannot eat in any conventional sense. Instead, they have a specialized organ called a trophosome, which fills most of their body cavity. The trophosome is packed with chemosynthetic bacteria, billions of them. The worms absorb hydrogen sulfide from the vent water using their red plumes, which contain hemoglobin similar to that in human blood. They also absorb oxygen from the surrounding seawater. Both chemicals are transported through the worm's body to the trophosome, where the bacteria use them to produce organic compounds. The worms absorb these compounds as food. It is a symbiotic relationship. Neither organism could survive without the other. The red plumes of the tube worms wave gently in the current, like flowers in a breeze. But they are not flowers. They are respiratory and feeding structures, optimized to extract the chemicals the worms need. The color comes from hemoglobin, which in the deep ocean has no visual purpose. But it serves a critical function, binding and transporting hydrogen sulfide and oxygen. Tube worms grow quickly by deep-sea standards. A worm can add several centimeters to its length each year. They live for decades, perhaps centuries. Some individuals may be more than 250 years old, though dating them precisely is difficult. They spend their entire lives anchored in one spot, their tube cemented to the rocks around the vent. They cannot move. If the vent goes cold, they die. There are also clams and mussels at the vents. They, too, host chemosynthetic bacteria in their tissues. The bacteria live in specialized cells in the gills, where they have access to both the chemicals from the vent and the oxygen from the water. The clams and mussels filter water through their gills, extracting what the bacteria need and absorbing the nutrients the bacteria produce. Vent clams can grow quite large, some species reaching the size of a dinner plate. They live in dense beds around the vents, their shells tightly packed together. The beds can contain thousands of individuals. They grow slowly, but steadily, as long as the vent remains active. There are crabs and shrimp at the vents as well. These are not symbiotic with bacteria in the same way as tube worms and clams. Instead, they graze on the bacterial mats that cover the rocks. They are scavengers, eating whatever organic material they can find. Some species have been observed farming bacteria, grooming and tending patches of bacterial growth to maximize their food supply. Vent shrimp in some locations have special adaptations. They lack normal eyes, but they have light-sensing organs on their backs. These organs can detect the faint thermal radiation emitted by the hot vent water. This helps the shrimp navigate, allowing them to stay close to the vent where food is abundant, but not so close that they are scalded by the superheated water. It is a delicate balance. There are fish at the vents, too. Pale, ghostly fish with reduced eyes or no eyes at all. They hover near the vents, feeding on the smaller invertebrates. Some species have antifreeze proteins in their blood to survive the cold water, while also having adaptations to tolerate the warm water near the vents. They live in a narrow zone where temperatures are moderate enough for survival. The entire ecosystem exists independently of the sun. It runs on the heat and chemicals from the Earth's interior. The energy comes not from nuclear fusion in the sun, millions of kilometers away, but from the decay of radioactive elements deep within the Earth, and from the residual heat left over from the planet's formation billions of years ago. This heat drives tectonic activity, which creates the vents, which provide the chemicals that fuel life. Hydrothermal vents do not last forever. The geological activity that creates them eventually shifts. The flow of hot water stops. The vent goes cold. And when it does, the ecosystem collapses. The tube worms cannot feed. The bacteria die. The clams and mussels starve. Within months or years, the once thriving community becomes a graveyard of empty shells and tubes. But new vents are always forming. Tectonic plates are constantly moving, creating new cracks in the ocean floor. Magma rises. Water circulates through the hot rock. New vents begin to flow. And life finds them. How life disperses from one vent to another is one of the great mysteries of vent biology. The vents are scattered along mid-ocean ridges, separated by dozens or hundreds of kilometers of barren ocean floor. The larvae of vent organisms must somehow travel these distances, carried by deep ocean currents, searching for the chemical signature of a new vent. Most larvae probably die during this journey. The distances are vast. The currents are slow and unpredictable. Food is scarce. But some survive. They find a new vent. They settle. They grow. They reproduce. And the cycle continues. This dispersal strategy requires enormous reproductive output. A single female tube worm or clam may produce millions of eggs in her lifetime. Most will never find a suitable habitat. But a few will, and that is enough to maintain the population across the ocean floor. Scientists have found that vent communities separated by thousands of kilometers are genetically similar, indicating that gene flow occurs between them. Larvae do cross these vast distances, maintaining genetic connectivity across the deep ocean. It is a testament to the power of reproduction, to the ability of life to spread and colonize even the most isolated environments. But vents are not the only places where chemosynthesis occurs. In some parts of the ocean floor, especially along continental margins, there are cold seeps. These are places where methane and hydrogen sulfide seep slowly out of the sediment. The flow is not as dramatic as a hydrothermal vent. There are no towering chimneys, no superheated water. But the chemicals are there, and so are the bacteria that feed on them. Cold seeps are often associated with deposits of methane hydrate, a crystalline form of methane trapped in ice. These deposits form under specific conditions of low temperature and high pressure, and they are found in many parts of the ocean floor. As the methane slowly diffuses out of the sediment, bacteria in the sediment and in the water consume it, using it as an energy source. Cold seeps support their own unique communities. There are different species of tube worms, adapted to the lower temperatures and different chemistry. Lamellobrachia tube worms, for example, live at cold seeps and can grow to several meters in length. They live for centuries, some individuals more than 250 years old. Their growth is extremely slow, just a few millimeters per year, but they are long-lived and resilient. There are mussels and clams at cold seeps, too, species different from those at hydrothermal vents but using similar strategies. They host bacteria in their gills, providing the bacteria with methane and sulfide and receiving nutrients in return. Some of these clams can live for more than a century, growing slowly but steadily throughout their lives. Cold seeps are more stable than hydrothermal vents. The flow of methane and sulfide is slow and steady, sometimes continuing for thousands or even millions of years. This stability allows for the development of mature, long-lived communities. The organisms at cold seeps do not face the boom-and-bust cycle of hydrothermal vents. They live in a kind of slow, steady, chemical-fed equilibrium. The communities at cold seeps are also associated with unique geological formations. As bacteria consume methane, they produce carbonate minerals as a byproduct. These minerals precipitate out of the water and form carbonate crusts on the ocean floor. Over time, these crusts can build up into large structures, creating a hard substrate in an otherwise soft sediment environment. Other organisms colonize these carbonate structures, increasing the diversity of the seep community. Another place where life exists without sunlight is inside the Earth itself. Deep beneath the surface, in cracks and pores within solid rock, there are microorganisms. These are not fossils. They are living bacteria and archaea, surviving on the chemicals dissolved in groundwater. They metabolize hydrogen, methane, sulfur compounds. They grow incredibly slowly. A single cell division might take years or even decades. But they are alive. These subsurface microbes were discovered relatively recently. Scientists drilling deep into the Earth's crust found DNA in samples taken from kilometers below the surface. At first, it was thought to be contamination from the surface. But further study confirmed that these organisms were native to the deep subsurface. They had lived there, isolated from the surface world, for millions of years. The discovery of subsurface life changed our understanding of the biosphere. For a long time, the biosphere was thought to be a thin shell at the Earth's surface, extending from the deepest ocean trenches up into the atmosphere. But now we know that the biosphere extends deep into the crust, perhaps as far as 5 kilometers down or more. The exact depth limit is still unknown, but it is set by temperature. Above about 120 degrees Celsius, most biochemical processes break down. Below that temperature, if liquid water is present and there is a source of chemical energy, life can exist. The deep biosphere may contain more biomass than all the life on the Earth's surface combined. Most of it is microbial. Most of it is growing so slowly that it is hard to detect. But it is there, a vast hidden world of life, thriving in the darkness, sustained by chemistry rather than sunlight. The organisms in the deep biosphere are primarily bacteria and archaea, two of the three domains of life. They are single-celled, lacking the complexity of plants or animals. But they are diverse. Different species use different chemical pathways to extract energy from their environment. Some reduce iron, converting ferric iron to ferrous iron and using the energy released. Some reduce sulfate, converting it to hydrogen sulfide. Some produce methane from carbon dioxide and hydrogen. Each species has its own niche, its own way of making a living in the deep rock. These microbes play an important role in global geochemical cycles. They influence the chemistry of groundwater. They affect the weathering of rocks. They may even influence the formation of mineral deposits, including economically important ores. Their slow metabolism, operating over millions of years, can have large cumulative effects. Studying the deep biosphere is challenging. Drilling into solid rock is expensive and time-consuming. Samples must be collected with extreme care to avoid contamination from surface organisms. The microbes themselves are difficult to culture in the laboratory. Many of them have never been grown outside their natural environment. They require specific conditions that are hard to replicate. But scientists continue to study these organisms, because they are important for understanding life. They represent some of the most ancient lineages of life on Earth. Their metabolic pathways may resemble those of the earliest organisms, billions of years ago. And they show us that life can exist in the most extreme environments, far beyond what we normally consider habitable. There are also caves. Not all caves are completely isolated from the surface. Many have openings that allow air, water, and organic material to enter. Animals like bats may live in the cave entrance and bring nutrients in from outside. But some caves are sealed systems, or nearly so. These are ankyllin caves, typically found in coastal limestone regions. They have connections to the ocean through underground passages, but no direct access to the surface. In these caves, there is no light. No photosynthesis. The water is clear and still. And yet, there are animals. Small crustaceans, pale and eyeless. Worms. Snails. Fish that have lost their pigmentation and their sight. These creatures feed on bacteria and fungi, which in turn feed on organic material that filters in from the ocean or from underground water sources. The food web is simple, but it functions. Cave-dwelling animals often show convergent evolution. Species that evolved independently, in different caves around the world, have developed similar features. Loss of eyes. Loss of pigmentation. Elongated appendages, used to sense vibrations and chemical cues in the water. Slower metabolism, adapted to a low-energy environment. These are the signatures of life in permanent darkness. The loss of eyes in cave animals is not immediate. It takes many generations. When a population first enters a cave, individuals still have functional eyes. But eyes are expensive to maintain. They require energy to grow and operate. In complete darkness, they provide no benefit. Over time, mutations that reduce eye development are not selected against. In fact, they may be advantageous, because the energy saved can be used for other purposes. Gradually, over thousands or millions of years, the eyes shrink and disappear. What remains are often just vestigial eye spots, visible under a microscope but non-functional. The loss of pigmentation follows a similar pattern. Color serves many purposes in surface animals. Camouflage. Warning signals. Mate attraction. But in complete darkness, color is invisible. The energy required to produce pigments is wasted. Mutations that reduce pigmentation accumulate. The animals become pale, translucent, ghostly. But these animals are not degenerate or inferior. They have not lost complexity. They have simply reallocated resources. What they lose in vision and color, they gain in other senses. Their antennae become longer and more sensitive. Their lateral line system, in fish, becomes more refined. They can detect the slightest water movements, the faintest chemical gradients. They are superbly adapted to their environment. One of the most studied cave ecosystems is the Moval Cave in Romania. It was sealed off from the outside world about 5.5 million years ago. The air inside is low in oxygen, about 10% compared to 21% at the surface. It is high in carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. The water contains sulfur compounds. These conditions would be toxic to most surface organisms. And yet, the cave is full of life. There are bacteria in the cave water and on the rocks. They oxidize sulfur and produce organic matter through chemosynthesis. These bacteria form floating mats on the surface of underground pools, dense tangles of bacterial filaments. Other organisms feed on these mats. There are nematodes, tiny roundworms. There are isopods, crustaceans that look like elongated pill bugs. There are spiders, centipedes, pseudoscorpions, leeches. More than 50 species have been found in Moval Cave, and most of them are found nowhere else on Earth. They evolved in isolation, cut off from the surface world, for millions of years. The ecosystem in Moval Cave is entirely independent of sunlight. The energy comes from chemical reactions, specifically the oxidation of hydrogen sulfide by bacteria. The food web is based on these bacteria. The animals that live there have never experienced light. They are products of millions of years of evolution in darkness, shaped by the unique chemistry of their environment. Other caves around the world host similar ecosystems. In Mexico, there are Anchialan caves in the Yucatan Peninsula, where freshwater from the land meets seawater from the ocean. These caves contain unique species of blind fish and crustaceans. In the Canary Islands, there are lava tubes, caves formed by flowing lava, where specialized invertebrates live in complete darkness. In China, there are immense cave systems, some containing underground rivers, where blind fish and salamanders have evolved. Each cave is an isolated world, cut off from neighboring caves by solid rock. The animals in one cave cannot easily reach another cave. This isolation leads to high levels of endemism. Each cave has its own unique species, found nowhere else. This makes cave ecosystems both scientifically valuable and extremely vulnerable. If a cave is polluted or destroyed, the species that live there may go extinct, disappearing forever. Human activity poses significant threats to cave ecosystems. Groundwater pollution can carry contaminants into caves. Excessive water extraction can lower water tables, draining underground pools. Cave tourism, if not carefully managed, can introduce organic material and disturb delicate communities. These ecosystems are fragile, and they have little resilience to sudden change. Antarctica offers another example of life without sunlight. Deep beneath the ice sheet, there are lakes. These are subglacial lakes, isolated from the atmosphere by hundreds or even thousands of meters of ice. The largest and most famous is Lake Vostok, buried beneath more than 3 kilometers of ice. No sunlight reaches these lakes. The water is cold, just above freezing, and under immense pressure from the weight of the ice. For a long time, scientists assumed these lakes were sterile. The ice above them is ancient, hundreds of thousands of years old. The lakes have been sealed off for similar periods. It seemed impossible that life could persist in such conditions. But in recent years, samples have been taken, and microorganisms have been found. Bacteria and archaea, living in the cold, dark water. They survive on chemicals dissolved from the bedrock below the lake and from the ice above. They metabolize iron, sulfur, and methane. They grow very slowly, but they are alive. The discovery of life in subglacial lakes required careful scientific work. Drilling through kilometers of ice without contaminating the lake below is extremely difficult. The drill equipment must be sterilized. The drilling fluid must be clean. Even with all precautions, there is always a risk of contamination. But multiple independent studies have confirmed that the microbes found in subglacial lake samples are native to those lakes, not contaminants from the surface. The microbes in Lake Vostok and other subglacial lakes are adapted to extreme cold and high pressure. Their cell membranes contain special lipids that remain flexible at low temperatures. Their enzymes are cold-adapted, functioning efficiently even near freezing. They grow extremely slowly, perhaps dividing only once every few years or decades. But they persist, maintaining populations over millennia. Life in subglacial lakes raises interesting questions about the possibility of life elsewhere in the solar system. Some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn have thick ice crusts covering deep oceans. Europa, a moon of Jupiter, has an ice shell estimated to be 10 to 30 kilometers thick, covering a global ocean that may be 100 kilometers deep. Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, has an ice shell covering an ocean that erupts through cracks in the ice, creating geysers that spray water into space. These moons receive very little sunlight. They are far from the sun, and their surfaces are frozen. But beneath the ice, there may be liquid water. And where there is liquid water, there may be life. Not life as we know it on the surface of Earth, but life like that found in the deep ocean or the subsurface. Microbial life, slow and simple, but life nonetheless. If life exists in the oceans of Europa or Enceladus, it would almost certainly be chemosynthetic. There is no sunlight beneath the ice. But there may be hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, similar to those on Earth. The tidal forces exerted by Jupiter on Europa, or by Saturn on Enceladus, generate heat in the interior of these moons. This heat could drive volcanic activity, creating vents where chemicals are released into the ocean. Bacteria could use these chemicals as an energy source, just as they do on Earth. Searching for such life is a major goal of planetary science. Missions are being planned to explore these moons. Europa Clipper, a NASA mission, will study Europa from orbit, analyzing the composition of its ice and the plumes of water that occasionally erupt from its surface. A future mission may land on Europa or Enceladus and drill through the ice, searching for life in the ocean below. It is a difficult challenge, but it is not impossible. If we find life on another world, it will likely be microbial. It will likely exist in darkness. It will likely be chemosynthetic, feeding on chemicals rather than light. And in finding it, we will confirm what we have learned here on Earth, that life does not require sunlight. That life is adaptable, resilient, and capable of existing in conditions far harsher than we ever imagined. All of these environments, different as they are, share certain common features. They are isolated from the sun. They are low in energy compared to surface ecosystems. The organisms that live in them grow slowly, reproduce rarely, and live long lives. They are adapted to scarcity, to stillness, to waiting. The evolution of life in these environments is a story of loss and gain. Loss of eyes, because eyes are expensive to maintain and useless without light. Loss of pigmentation, because color serves no purpose in the dark. Loss of speed, because fast movement requires energy that is not available. But there are gains, too. Enhanced chemical senses, able to detect the faintest traces of food or predators. Efficient metabolism, extracting every possible calorie from scarce resources. The ability to survive long periods without eating. The ability to tolerate extreme pressure, cold, heat, or chemical toxicity. These adaptations did not happen quickly. They took millions of years. Small changes, one generation at a time, gradually shifting the biology of these organisms toward a form better suited to life in the dark. Natural selection does not have a goal. It does not plan ahead. But over time, it produces organisms that fit their environment so precisely that they seem almost designed for it. One interesting aspect of life without sunlight is the absence of circadian rhythms in some species. Circadian rhythms are internal biological clocks that help organisms anticipate the cycle of day and night. In surface-dwelling animals, these rhythms regulate sleep, feeding, hormone production, and many other processes. They are synchronized by exposure to light. But in the deep ocean, in caves, in the subsurface, there is no day and night. There is only continuous darkness. Some organisms in these environments have lost their circadian rhythms entirely. Their activity levels are constant. They do not sleep in the way that surface animals do. They are always in a state of quiet alertness, waiting for food or avoiding predators. The loss of circadian rhythms has been studied in cave fish. When researchers examine the genes responsible for regulating these rhythms, they find that many of the genes have accumulated mutations. The molecular clock has stopped. The fish no longer respond to light-dark cycles because they never experience such cycles. In the laboratory, when exposed to artificial day-night lighting, these fish show no behavioral response. They swim and feed at random times, showing no preference for day or night. Other deep-sea creatures do have rhythms, but they are not based on light. They are based on other cues. The daily migration of marine snow, perhaps. Or the tidal cycle, which affects water pressure and current even at great depth. Life finds a way to organize itself, even in the absence of the most obvious signal. The tidal cycle is particularly important in some deep-sea environments. Even at depths of several kilometers, tidal forces cause subtle changes in pressure and current. Some deep-sea organisms can detect these changes and use them to time their activities. Reproduction may be synchronized with tidal cycles. Feeding behavior may follow tidal patterns. The rhythm is not as strong or obvious as the day-night cycle at the surface, but it exists. Studying these environments is difficult. The deep ocean is hard to reach. Submersibles are expensive and can only carry a few people. Each dive costs tens of thousands of dollars and lasts only a few hours. The time at the bottom is limited by battery life and life support systems. Scientists must make the most of every minute. Remotely operated vehicles have made deep-sea exploration more accessible. These are robotic platforms, tethered to a ship at the surface by a long cable. They carry cameras, lights, and manipulator arms. They can stay underwater for many hours, exploring and collecting samples. They are less expensive than manned submersibles and can go deeper. But they lack the intuition and adaptability of a human pilot. They are tools, not substitutes for human presence. Autonomous underwater vehicles are another option. These are untethered robots that can swim independently, following pre-programmed routes or responding to environmental cues. They carry sensors to measure temperature, salinity, and chemical composition. They can map the ocean floor. They can detect and track organisms. But they cannot collect samples or perform complex manipulations. They are best suited for survey work, for gathering data over large areas. Each technology has its strengths and limitations. Manned submersibles provide the most flexibility and intuition. Remotely operated vehicles provide longer bottom time and deeper access. Autonomous vehicles provide broad coverage. Scientists use all three, choosing the right tool for each mission. Sampling the deep subsurface requires drilling equipment and specialized techniques to avoid contamination. The drill must penetrate through layers of sediment and rock, sometimes kilometers deep. The drilling fluid must be free of surface microbes. The core samples must be collected in sterile containers and kept at the right temperature and pressure until they can be analyzed. It is a slow, expensive process, but it is the only way to access life deep within the earth. Exploring caves is dangerous, especially when they are underwater and filled with toxic gases. Cave divers must navigate through narrow passages in complete darkness, relying on guideline ropes to find their way out. They carry multiple lights and backup equipment. They monitor their air supply carefully. A single mistake can be fatal. Yet cave exploration continues, because these environments hold secrets that cannot be found anywhere else. But scientists continue to study these places, because they teach us something fundamental about life. They show us that life is not as fragile as we might think. It does not require sunlight. It does not require a narrow range of temperatures or pressures. It does not require the conditions we experience on the surface. Life is adaptable. Life is persistent. Life finds a way. This does not mean that life is easy in these environments. It is not. The organisms that live there face constant challenges. Food is scarce. Reproduction is slow. Populations are small, which makes them vulnerable to extinction. A single disturbance, a change in chemistry or temperature, could wipe out an entire ecosystem. These are fragile places, in their own way. But they are also resilient. They have existed for millions of years. They have survived volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, shifts in ocean currents, ice ages. They have persisted through changes that would have destroyed surface ecosystems. And they will likely continue to persist, long into the future, as long as the chemical and physical conditions that sustain them remain stable. There is something humbling about thinking of life in these terms. We live in a world of light and color and constant change. We take the sun for granted. We assume that life, by its nature, is bright and active and dependent on the energy that pours down from the sky. But in the deep ocean, in the caves, in the subsurface, life has found another way. A quieter way. A slower way. A way that does not depend on the sun at all. These organisms do not know they are living in darkness. They have no concept of light. For them, their environment is normal. It is all they have ever known. They are not struggling to survive in a hostile world. They are simply living, in the only way they know how, in the only place they have ever been. It is worth considering what this means for our understanding of life in the universe. For a long time, scientists assumed that life required a planet like Earth. A planet with liquid water, a stable climate, and abundant sunlight. But the discovery of life in extreme environments on Earth has changed that assumption. Life does not require sunlight. It requires energy, yes, but that energy can come from chemistry, not just from a star. It requires liquid water, but that water can be hidden beneath ice or locked in pores within rock. It requires a stable environment, but that environment does not need to be on the surface. This has expanded the definition of what makes a planet or moon habitable. Moons like Europa and Enceladus, once considered barren and dead, are now considered potential sites for life. Not life as we know it on the surface of Earth, but life like that found in the deep ocean or the subsurface. Microbial life, slow and simple, but life nonetheless. The concept of a habitable zone, once defined as the narrow region around a star where liquid water could exist on a planet's surface, has been expanded. Now we consider subsurface habitability. A moon or planet might be frozen on the surface, far from the warmth of its star, but still have liquid water beneath the ice, heated by tidal forces or radioactive decay. This greatly increases the number of potentially habitable worlds. Searching for such life is a challenge. We cannot yet send robots to drill through kilometers of ice on a distant moon. We cannot analyze the chemistry of a subsurface ocean billions of kilometers away. But missions are being planned. Instruments are being developed. And someday, perhaps within the next few decades, we may find evidence of life beyond Earth. If we do, it will likely be life that exists without sunlight. Life that thrives in the dark. The search for life elsewhere begins with understanding life here. Every discovery in the deep ocean, in the caves, in the subsurface, informs our search. Every new organism we find expands our understanding of what life can be. Every new ecosystem shows us a new possibility, a new way that life can organize itself in the absence of light. The creatures of the deep ocean do not build cities. They do not create art or write stories. They do not contemplate their existence or wonder about the universe, but they are, in their own way, as successful as any organism on Earth. They have found a niche. They have adapted. They have persisted. They have done what all life seeks to do, which is simply to continue. There is a certain peace in that. A certain simplicity. Life does not need to be complex or grand to be meaningful. It does not need to be noticed or understood. It simply needs to be. And in the deep ocean, in the caves, in the hidden cracks of the earth, life is quiet, still, unseen, but alive. We, on the surface, live in a different world. Our days are filled with light. Our nights are illuminated by artificial sources. We move quickly. We consume energy at a rate that would be unimaginable to a deep-sea fish or a cave-dwelling crustacean. We are connected to the sun in 1,000 ways, most of which we never notice. The food we eat was grown with sunlight. The oxygen we breathe was produced by plants using sunlight. The fossil fuels we burn were formed from ancient organisms that lived by sunlight, millions of years ago. But we are not so different from the creatures of the deep. We, too, are adapted to our environment. We, too, depend on energy and chemistry and the delicate balance of physical and biological systems. We, too, are part of a web of life that stretches across the planet and back through time. We are not separate from nature. We are part of it, just as the anglerfish and the tube worm and the subsurface bacterium are part of it. It is easy to forget this, living in cities, surrounded by technology. But the connection is still there. We are still biological beings, shaped by evolution, dependent on the systems that sustain all life. And perhaps, in some small way, learning about life in the deep ocean or in the caves can help us remember that. It can help us see ourselves as part of something larger. Something ancient. Something that has persisted, in countless forms, in countless environments, for billions of years. Life without sunlight is not an aberration. It is not a curiosity. It is a fundamental part of the diversity of life on Earth. It shows us that life is not limited to the conditions we experience. It shows us that life is creative, adaptable, and resilient. It shows us that there are worlds within our world, hidden from view, waiting to be discovered. And it shows us that even in the darkest places, where no light has ever reached, life finds a way. The study of these environments is ongoing. New species are discovered regularly. New ecosystems are found. Each discovery adds to our understanding of what life is, and what it can be. Each discovery raises new questions. How did these organisms evolve? How do they communicate? How do they reproduce in such isolated environments? What limits their distribution? What would happen if their environment changed? Some of these questions have answers. Others do not yet. Science is a process of slow accumulation. Each study adds a small piece to the puzzle. Each expedition brings back new data. Each analysis reveals a new detail. Over time, the picture becomes clearer. But it is never complete. There is always more to learn. One of the challenges in studying deep-sea life is that many of these organisms are difficult to observe in their natural environment. They live at depths that are hard to reach. The pressure at those depths makes it difficult to bring them to the surface alive. Many deep-sea creatures die or are damaged during collection. Their bodies are adapted to high pressure and low temperature, and they cannot survive the change. Aquariums and research facilities have made progress in keeping some deep-sea organisms alive in captivity. Special tanks can simulate the high pressure and low temperature of the deep ocean. The Monterey Bay Aquarium in California has successfully maintained deep-sea animals in pressurized exhibits. Visitors can see jellies and other creatures from the deep, swimming in tanks that recreate their natural conditions. But it is expensive and technically challenging. And even when successful, there is always a question of whether the animals are behaving naturally, or whether they are stressed by captivity. Remotely operated vehicles have made it possible to observe deep-sea life in situ, without disturbing it. Cameras can record behavior. Sensors can measure environmental conditions. Robotic arms can take samples. These tools have revolutionized the study of the deep ocean. But they are still limited. They can only observe what is within the range of their cameras and sensors. They cannot follow an animal over long distances. They cannot observe the full complexity of an ecosystem. Some of the most revealing studies have come from placing cameras and sensors on the ocean floor for extended periods. These time-lapse systems can record activity at a site for months or years. They reveal patterns that would never be seen during a single dive. They show how animals behave over time, how they respond to changes in their environment, how they interact with each other. One such study placed a camera at a whale fall in Monterey Bay. Over the course of years, the camera recorded the entire succession of the whale fall community. The initial arrival of scavengers. The transition to bone-eating worms. The final reef stage. All of it was captured, frame by frame, providing a complete picture of the ecosystem's development. This kind of data is invaluable for understanding how deep-sea communities function. Despite these limitations, our understanding of life without sunlight has grown enormously in the past few decades. We now know that these environments are far more diverse and dynamic than previously thought. We know that they play an important role in global biogeochemical cycles. We know that they may hold clues to the origin of life on Earth, and to the possibility of life elsewhere in the universe. The origin of life on Earth is still a mystery. We do not know exactly when or where it began. But many scientists believe that life may have started in a deep-sea hydrothermal vent, or in a similar environment. The chemical conditions at vents are similar to those thought to exist on early Earth. The energy from hydrothermal vents could have driven the first chemical reactions that led to life. The minerals in the vent structures could have provided surfaces for those reactions to occur. This is known as the hydrothermal vent hypothesis for the origin of life. It is not the only hypothesis, but it is one of the leading ones. And if it is correct, then life on Earth began in darkness, not in sunlight. Photosynthesis came later, as an evolutionary innovation. The first life was chemosynthetic, feeding on chemicals rather than light. The minerals at hydrothermal vents, particularly iron sulfide minerals, have properties that make them interesting as potential catalysts for early biochemistry. They can facilitate electron transfer reactions, similar to what happens in modern metabolism. They can concentrate organic molecules from dilute solutions. They can provide a structured environment where reactions can occur in an organized way. Some researchers have even suggested that the porous structure of vent minerals could have acted as primitive cells, containing and protecting early biochemical reactions before true cell membranes evolved. This is a speculative idea, but it is based on sound chemistry. The transition from non-living chemistry to living biochemistry is one of the great unsolved problems in science, and hydrothermal vents offer one possible answer. This idea changes the way we think about life. It suggests that light is not essential. It suggests that life, at its most fundamental level, is a chemical process. A process that can occur wherever there is liquid water, a source of energy, and the right elements. Sunlight is one source of energy, but it is not the only one. Chemical reactions can provide energy just as well, given the right conditions. This has implications for how we search for life beyond Earth. Instead of looking only for planets in the habitable zone, where liquid water can exist on the surface and sunlight is available, we should also look for moons with subsurface oceans, or planets with active geology that could create hydrothermal vents. We should look for places where chemistry, not sunlight, could drive the processes of life. Mars, for example, was once a much wetter planet. Ancient river valleys and lake beds are visible on its surface. Liquid water once flowed there, billions of years ago. If life arose on Mars during that wet period, it may have retreated underground as the surface dried out. Deep beneath the Martian surface, there may still be liquid water. There may still be chemical energy sources. There may still be life, microbial and hidden, persisting in the subsurface just as it does on Earth. It also changes the way we think about the distribution of life in the universe. If life does not require sunlight, then it could exist in far more places than we previously thought. It could exist on rogue planets, drifting through space with no star to orbit. These planets could have subsurface oceans, heated by radioactive decay, supporting chemosynthetic life even without a sun. It could exist in the icy moons of gas giants, far from the warmth of a sun. It could exist deep underground on Mars, or in the subsurface oceans of distant exoplanets. The universe could be far more alive than we ever imagined, filled with hidden ecosystems that we have not yet learned how to detect. But for now, we focus on Earth. On the hidden worlds that exist here, beneath the surface, beyond the reach of light. These worlds are strange and beautiful. They are harsh and unforgiving. They are slow and patient. They are, in their own way, peaceful. There is no rush in the deep ocean. No hurry. Time moves differently there. Days and years and centuries pass with little change. The organisms that live there have no concept of time as we understand it. They do not count the days or mark the seasons. They simply exist, moment to moment, responding to the immediate needs of survival. This is a kind of existence that is hard for us to imagine. We are creatures of change. Our lives are filled with events and milestones. We measure our time in hours and days and years. We plan for the future. We remember the past. We are always moving, always doing, always thinking. But in the deep ocean, there is stillness. There is waiting. There is the slow drift of marine snow, the faint glow of bioluminescence, the cold embrace of the water. There is existence without narrative. Life without story. And perhaps there is something to learn from that. Perhaps, in our constant rush, in our endless pursuit of more and better and faster, we lose something. We lose the ability to simply be. To exist in the moment, without thought of past or future. To find peace in stillness. The creatures of the deep do not know they are teaching us this lesson. They are not trying to. They are simply living, in the only way they know how. But we can choose to see them as a reminder. A reminder that life does not have to be fast or bright or loud to be valuable. A reminder that there is beauty in the dark, in the quiet, in the slow and patient unfolding of time. The ocean is vast. Most of it is deep and dark. Most of it has never been explored. There are more species in the deep ocean than we have yet discovered. There are ecosystems we have never seen. There are processes we do not yet understand. Scientists estimate that we have explored less than 5% of the ocean floor. The remaining 95% is unknown territory. Every expedition discovers new species. Every dive reveals new behaviors. The deep ocean is Earth's last great frontier, and we are only beginning to understand it. Some regions are more studied than others. The mid-ocean ridges, where hydrothermal vents are found, have received significant attention. The abyssal plains, the flat regions between the ridges, are less studied. The deep trenches, the deepest parts of the ocean, are barely known at all. Only a handful of people have ever visited the bottom of the Mariana Trench, and their time there was measured in hours, not days. But we are beginning to learn. Slowly. Carefully. With respect for the fragility and importance of these hidden worlds. We are learning that life is more diverse, more adaptable, more resilient than we ever imagined. We are learning that the conditions we consider normal are not universal. We are learning that life can exist in ways we never thought possible. And in learning about life without sunlight, we are learning something about ourselves. About our place in the world. About the limits and possibilities of life itself. About the deep, quiet mystery that exists beneath the surface of everything we know. The night sky is filled with stars. Each star is a sun, like ours. Each star could have planets. Each planet could have conditions that allow for life. Some of that life might exist on the surface, bathed in starlight. But much of it, perhaps most of it, might exist in the dark. In the depths of alien oceans. In the cracks of frozen moons. In the subsurface of distant worlds. And if we ever find that life, it will feel familiar to us. Because we have already found it, here on Earth. We have already seen what life looks like when it exists without sunlight. We have already learned that darkness is not the absence of life. It is just another environment, another set of conditions, another challenge that life has met and overcome. Life without sunlight is not a contradiction. It is not an impossibility. It is a reality, here and now, on our own planet. It is a quiet, steady presence, existing in places we rarely see, doing things we rarely notice, but always there. Always alive. The deep ocean continues its slow rhythm. The vents continue to flow. The bacteria continue to synthesize organic matter from chemicals. The tube worms continue to grow, slowly, in the darkness. The fish continue to swim, their bioluminescent organs glowing faintly. The marine snow continues to fall, drifting down through the water column like a gentle, perpetual snowfall. In the caves, the pale crustaceans continue to swim through clear water. The bacteria continue to grow on the rocks. The isopods continue to graze. The spiders continue to wait for prey. Everything moves slowly, with patience, with no sense of urgency. In the deep subsurface, the microbes continue their incredibly slow metabolism. Cell divisions that take years or decades. Chemical reactions that release tiny amounts of energy. Populations that persist, unchanged, for millions of years. Life at the slowest possible pace, but life nonetheless. As we close this exploration, it is worth taking a moment to reflect. To imagine the deep ocean, stretching out in all directions, dark and cold and vast. To imagine the creatures that live there, moving slowly through the water, their bodies glowing faintly, their senses attuned to the slightest chemical or vibration. To imagine the tube worms at the hydrothermal vents, swaying gently in the warm current, their tissues filled with bacteria, their existence bound to the heat rising from the Earth's core. To imagine the microbes in the deep subsurface, locked in stone, growing so slowly that a single generation spans decades, sustained by nothing but the chemistry of the rock and water around them. To imagine the pale, eyeless fish in the Anchialan caves, drifting through clear water, feeding on bacteria, unaware that a world of light exists above them. These are not just curiosities. They are not just strange oddities of nature. They are part of the fabric of life on Earth. They are part of the story of evolution, of adaptation, of survival. They are proof that life is not limited. Not by darkness. Not by pressure. Not by isolation. Life finds a way, even in the most unlikely places. And perhaps, in recognizing that, we can find a kind of comfort. A reminder that life is resilient. That it persists, even in the hardest conditions. That it adapts, and endures, and continues. That no matter how dark or cold or inhospitable the world may seem, there is always life, somewhere, finding a way to exist. These hidden worlds, these ecosystems of darkness, are not separate from us. They are part of the same planet, the same biosphere, the same web of life that includes everything from bacteria to blue whales. They are connected to the surface through the slow cycling of elements, through the movement of water, through evolutionary history that stretches back billions of years. Understanding them helps us understand life itself. The fundamental processes. The basic requirements. The incredible flexibility of biological systems. And in understanding these things, we come closer to answering the deepest questions. What is life? Where did it come from? Where else might it exist? What is our place in the vast cosmos? These are questions without simple answers. But each discovery brings us closer. Each organism we find in the deep ocean or the dark caves adds to our knowledge. Each measurement we take of pressure and temperature and chemistry helps us understand the limits of life. Each analysis of DNA helps us trace the evolutionary history that connects all living things. Thank you for spending this time in the quiet dark with us. For exploring these hidden worlds with patience and curiosity. For allowing yourself to slow down, to listen, to imagine places beyond the reach of light. For taking this journey through the deep ocean, through the caves, through the hidden places where life persists without sun. If you found this journey peaceful, if it helped you rest, you are welcome to return anytime. Deep Ocean Sleep Science will be here, exploring the slow, gentle mysteries of the natural world. There is no urgency. No deadline. Just the steady presence of knowledge, softly shared. Just the quiet exploration of life in all its forms, in all its environments. You may subscribe if you wish, but there is no pressure. No need to decide now. Just rest. Just breathe. Just let the images and ideas settle gently in your mind, like marine snow drifting down through dark water. Let yourself imagine the stillness of the deep ocean. The patience of the cave-dwelling creatures. The slow, steady persistence of life in the darkest places. The deep ocean is still there. The vents are still glowing. The creatures are still moving, slowly, patiently, through the endless dark. The bacteria are still synthesizing organic matter from chemicals. The tube worms are still swaying in the current. The fish are still swimming, their lights glowing faintly in the darkness. The marine snow is still falling. And you, wherever you are part of the same living world. Connected. Safe. At peace. You are made of the same elements that flow through those deep ecosystems. The same carbon. The same nitrogen. The same oxygen. Your cells use similar chemistry, similar processes. You are related, however distantly, to every organism in the deep ocean. You share a common ancestor, billions of years ago. In a very real sense, the deep ocean is part of you, and you are part of it. The water in your body has cycled through the oceans. The atoms in your bones were forged in stars and scattered through space and eventually became part of Earth, part of the ocean, part of life. You are not separate from these hidden worlds. You are connected to them, through chemistry and evolution and the shared history of life on Earth. Rest now. Let the darkness hold you gently. Let the quiet surround you. Let sleep come, soft and slow and sure. Let yourself drift, like marine snow through dark water, settling peacefully into rest. Let your breathing slow, like the slow metabolism of deep-sea creatures. Let your thoughts quiet, like the stillness of a sealed cave. There is no rush. No urgency. Only the gentle, steady rhythm of existence. Only the slow unfolding of time. Only the peace of darkness, of stillness, of rest. Good night.